Alright, hi. Running MS-DOS version 6.22, 20th Anniversary Edition, Van Wolvertine. Copyrighted 2003 by Van Wolvertine. Um, Table of Contents, running MS-DOS version 6.22, 20th Anniversary Edition, preface, 21st Introduction. Part 1, Chapter Getting to Know MS-DOS. What is MS-DOS? Chapter 2, Starting MS-DOS. Chapter 3, Getting Your Bearings. Chapter 4, Look at files in a floppy disk. Learn use MS-DOS, managing your files, managing a floppy disk, managing your device. A tree of files, managing a hard disk, protecting your disk and files, MS-DOS shell. Chapter 11, Chapter 12, Creating Editing Files and Text. Chapter 13, Text Control of Your System. Chapter 14, Creating Your Own Commands. Chapter 15, Creating Smart Commands. Chapter 16, Creating More Smart Commands. And Chapter 17, Telling Your System. Appendix A, Installing MS-DOS. Appendix B, Glossary. Appendix C, MS-DOS. Command Reference, Index, List of Figures. Alright, the back cover and about the author. Table of Contents, Comments. Preface, 20th Edition, Anniversary Edition. Acknowledgements. Introduction. What this book and where. About examples. Part 1, Getting to Know MS-DOS. Chapter 1, What is MS-DOS? Chapter 2, Starting MS-DOS. Chapter 3, Getting Your Bearings. Chapter 4, Look at the Files and Floppy Disk. Parts Overview. Part 1, Introduce the concept of the operating system, what it is, what it does, what do you need it, why you need it, and then describe the term of the basic operation principle, the MS-DOS. The 4 chapters show you how to start with the MS-DOS, how to control the system with your MS-DOS commands, to give you the foundation for the use of the MS-DOS effectively in your daily work with the computer. Information is primary tutorial. Many examples are included. Later books contain detailed reference information that describes all MS-DOS commands and their capabilities. Chapter 1, What is MS-DOS? You got the computer, you probably got one or two programs such as word processor or spreadsheet to use with it, but what is the thing called MS-DOS? Why do you hear so much about it? Why have hundreds of pages of the instructions that have been written for it? MS-DOS is a program, but it's not just any program. No other programs would work without because of the MS-DOS controls every part of the computer system. MS-DOS not only makes it possible for your other programs to work, it also gives you the complete control over what the computer does. How MS-DOS is linking between you and your computer. To appreciate the roles that MS-DOS play, to take a quick look at the pieces of your computer system, what they do, and what they do. Hardware make it possible. Your computer equipment called the hardware probably include with the keyboard display, with the printer, with the one or more disk drive. The purpose of the first three with the straightforward, you type the instruction with the keyboard, with the system respond with the displaying with the printing messages and results. Purpose of the disk drive is not so obvious, but quickly becomes apparent as you view the system of the disk drive that records and plays back information, much of the tape deck with the record with the plays back music. Computer information is recorded in the files on the disk. You file with the disk if it is central. Whether your computer works on paper, the paper files are to more traditional office work. Software makes it happen. No matter how powerful the hardware of the computer, you can do anything without the program called software. The computers are even the two major types of the software system: programs which control the operation of the computer system, and the application programs which perform more obvious useful tasks such as word processing. Each program using the hardware must be able to receive the instruction for the keyboard, with the display, with the printer result, with the read, write, with the file, with the from, to a distance, and receive the data through the computer communication connection, with the change of the color display, so on through all of the capabilities of the hardware. So each program does not have to perform all these functions for itself. The system program called the operating system manages the hardware. The operating system allows the application program to concentrate on what it does best and whatever move the paragraphs about with the tracking account receivable, calculating strength of the printed beam. MS-DOS is an operating system. MS-DOS, a disk operating system. Most frequently used the operating system of the IBM compatible computers is the Microsoft Disk Operation System. So Microsoft or MS-DOS. MS-DOS is covered the disk operating system, cover much of the work involved with managing disk and files. What does the operating system do? Operating system with a role, something like with a sympathy with the conductor, what score with the cause of the violin, play with the conductor, cue with the violin, when the score says the cellos should play more softly, the timpani should stop, and the entire orchestra should pick up with the tempo with the conductor, so with the instruction of the musicians. Playing with the orchestra with the instrument represents the hardware, the experience with the skill with the conductor represents the operating system, the score represents the application program. One score is replay for the note with the Beethoven, the fifth symphony is put aside with a replay for the heart, head, and surprise symphony. For example, the same musician use the same instrument, same conductor, use the same experience and skill with a different sound with a different move, but perhaps the elements are the same. When one application program is replaced for the note, for example, the accounting program put aside with a replay for the word processor, same hardware carries out with the instruction of the same operating system. Different program, different purpose, perhaps but all the elements are the same. MS-DOS coordinates for the computer system, just for the coordinates orchestra. Your application program runs incorrect, and it runs in concert with the MS-DOS, stressing it to keep the system humming. Much of the MS-DOS does, such how it stores files on disk, prints on the printer, invisible to you. MS-DOS lets you control things that you care about, such as which for the program to run with the document, to print with what file with the RAID. These functions share an important character for the need of the disk and disk drives. Disk drive. The personal computer have two main types of disk floppy, flexible disk, protected plastic jacket with called the floppy disk, which can remove the drive with a permanently mounted unit of the hardware disk. With the two types of the floppy disk, 5.25 inch square flexible plastic jacket and 3.5 square inch rigid plastic shell. Hard disk holds much more information. Floppy disks from 15 to 100 times as much, or even more, with a much faster. Personal computers, one hard disk, two floppy disk drive. With a machine hard disk usually have two floppy disk drives. Distinguish amount of the type of the disk of the books of the floppy disk is main either, but the type of the flexible disk of the hard disk is meant with a permanently mounted disk, and the disk is referred to as both. Alright, disk files. You can just organize the store with a written record with a paper file, with the organized store with the computer information disk file. With the disk file, usually called the file collection related information stored on a disk. Could be a letter with the income tax return list of the costs, or could also be of the program because of the programming are stored in the files. Virtually all of the computer works revolves around the files, because one of the major functions of the MS-DOS is to take care of the files, much of the disk of the devoted with showing you how to create, print, copy, organize other managed disk. Where is MS-DOS? Your computer is turned off. The MS-DOS is stored on disk, although a special type of the program. The MS-DOS is still with the program, means that it's stored within the disk and set files like any other collection of the computer information. If your computer hard disk for the MS-DOS is probably already on it and placed there, perhaps with a computer dealer and by someone else who set up your system. If your computer does not have a hard disk, it must be used by MS-DOS from floppy disk, so it should have a copy of the MS-DOS on two or more floppy disks. Alright, different versions of MS-DOS. MS-DOS revived with a number of times since the release of the 1981. The first version with the number 1.0. MS-DOS revised to add capability with taking advantage of more sophisticated hardware with the correct area for the system. The MS-DOS must take display version number by using. What new version of the MS-DOS appeared with the chain with the number to following with the decimal point, the 6.0 and 6.2, even the 6.22, for example, the mark for the binary change for the lead with the new version MS-DOS substantially the same with the previous version, the change with the number for the proceed with the decimal point mark for the major change. Version 6.0, for example, adds several new features that weren't available in version 5.0. Even though the new version of the MS-DOS can do a lot more than the early version of the MS-DOS will remain compatible with the earlier version. If you start with the version 2.1, you can still use the old knowledge experience plus your files and disk when you move to the newer version of MS-DOS. For simplicity, you will refer to the MS-DOS with the major version normally only. For example, the version 5 of the version 4 rather than the version 5 of the version 4.01. Almost omit the reference of the version of the MS-DOS earlier version 3 with a bunch of information applied with the version 2. Remember that version 2 is just as much as part of the MS-DOS as version 5. It's simply older, and although it includes many features that described here, it does not provide them all. What is compatibility? You may not see the term an IBM compatible article or an ad advertisement of the compatibility actually mean. Compatibility essentially refers to the ability of one computer to use the program dedicated with the store of the computer ever to use it with the most meaningful measure for the capability extent with which can use the same program with the data and floppy disk with the computer with the different make for the different model within two flash system. Totally compatible with the free use of the same program, floppy disk with the type of compatibility exists with the different module with the IBM personal computer for the IBM compatible machines based by manufacturers other than IBM. The machine is fully compatible with most of the MS-DOS. Any computer that runs MS-DOS can run programs derived for MS-DOS, and that computer can give the proper application programs freely. Either the floppy disk and any other MS-DOS computer. Incompatible systems may differ with a version with the same program, but they can't use either program floppy disk intended with the other computer. This is typically a situation between IBM Macintosh computer with the IBM machine. Can, for example, use the IBM version of the Microsoft Word. The Macintosh can use the Macintosh version of Microsoft Word, but neither computer can use version intended for the other. This book describes MS-DOS works on all IBM and IBM compatible machines. What can you do with the MS-DOS? MS-DOS, according to the operation of the computer application program with a variable essential relief. The MS-DOS has much more offered. You can use the MS-DOS itself with control of the instructions called command with the manager file with control of the work to perform useful tasks that might otherwise require additional software. For example, the MS-DOS included the program and the layout that you create with a revised file with the text and not a word. Although it is not a WordPress for the MS-DOS editor, is fine short memo listing the you can write with short documents in less time than it may take using word processing program. You can tailor the MS-DOS your specific need with creating powerful commands. Make it up with the MS-DOS commands. You can even create your own small application. For the example, the book showed how to create with a simple file manager program that lets you search and file specific information using everything of the MS-DOS commands. MS-DOS version 4 through 6 include the separate program called the shell that lets you choose the command file for the on-screen list of the called menus. If you want, you can use the shell for the routine work. Dispense with it and work directly with MS-DOS. Remove it freely with the MS-DOS and the shell as the work requires. Your knowledge MS-DOS can range from just enough of the single application program to mastery with the full range capability of the latest version. No matter how far you go, you do not need to learn a program to. You needn't learn to program. It's all MS-DOS. It's all in this book. Alright, chapter summary. The quick tour of the MS-DOS have introduced several new terms of the concepts here with the key points for the remember the working computer need for both the hardware and equipment, the software programs, MS-DOS with the Microsoft Disk operating system that coordinates of the operation of all parts of the computer system, files collection related information stored on the disk. Most of the computer works involves file for the basic. Besides running your application program, MS-DOS is available only on the right. MS-DOS is available in its own right. Next chapter starts you off at the keyboard. Chapter 2, Starting MS-DOS.